This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Gary Smith.
Gary, happy Sunday. Welcome to the altar of BARD. To everybody who's watching and listening, it's become quite a phenomena, and always glad to. It really kind of kicks off the Sunday. You know, I'll tell you, I love it.
I do too. Yeah, it's a nice way to get Sunday going and feel like you got something accomplished behind you for the rest of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gary and I were in deciding topics. We were torn because we definitely want to talk about the Pelosi video, but we almost feel like it would be blasphemy to do without Ace present. So
I think so. I think we're best to wait until Tuesday.
Okay. And then Memphis as well. I mean, I have a lot to say about Memphis, but we should do it in a long format. I mean, it kind of, I'll give a coming attraction for Tuesday. It kind of is right there in kind of a continuing conversation that you, me, and Ace have had for years. And when I say years, I mean years, that this is a police kind of a culture problem, as opposed to the way it's been characterized, I think, a lot of times in the past. And that's a larger form discussion that we can have on Tuesday.
Yeah, most definitely. And probably even beyond into next Friday, because like you said, it is a much longer form discussion. We're going to need to have some time with it.
Yeah. I mean, you can see here that there's a discombobulation amongst people who comment, who thought they understood this, and now there's certain facts that just don't fit into their narratives, so to speak. And from our standpoint, my standpoint, coming on the heels, especially of settling the Shaver case and arguing the Partridge case in St. Louis, and watching the case that we're tentatively scheduled in Los Angeles. I mean, we can take 15 minutes on all of that, but clearly there's something else going on here, as we have been kind of shouting for the last 8 years during this show, and we'll let Ace participate on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to return to one of Gary and my standby favorites, because it's got virtually everything, and it has kind of captured the national imagination of those who like true crime and court cases and sex and drugs and you name it. It's got everything, and the law. So that's, of course, the Murdoch case.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a case that we've been following for at least half the life of this podcast. I mean, it's been going on in one way or another. You know, I think we found it in 2020, but the boat crash was in 2019. So it's been going for a while, and we're finally here. Yeah.
And we're in the midst of trial, and emotions are heated. Emotions in the courtroom, obviously, by Alex Murdaugh, and some of the things that I shake my head when I follow some of the people who are very invested in Twitter, and it's amazing to me the kinds of things they say. There is a basic assumption of guilt amongst the Twitter chatter people. And that's fine. I understand. There's nothing that says only if you're in the jury box, basically, do you have to. And I think if you're a responsible media person, do you kind of have to always couch these things with a presumption of innocence, which is the legal standard. But the people, I mean, when I see lawyers say idiotic stuff like, well, his family, Murdaugh's family, is sitting on his side of the courtroom, not the prosecution's side of the courtroom, and that's a betrayal to the people who died. You just have to scratch your head and say, do you understand that is the legal conclusion that you're there for? You've already assumed the guilt. So why are you telling the family, by the way, who has the right and the unfettered right in most jurisdictions, constitutional right, to be heard? Why are you telling them they cannot support their family member and that they should be with the prosecution? It's a bedeviling and just frankly illogical position to take.
Yeah, I was really confused when I saw that take, that it somehow is telegraphing to the jury. I don't know. It seems I seem to remember plenty of cases where families will come out and support, even if they don't necessarily think that the party is innocent. That's their family member who's still around, and they're going to be there to support them through a very tough time in their life, one way or another. And I understand that this is a case involving family, and it's easy and fun to snipe from the cheap seats, but that one just never made sense to me.
Yeah, it still doesn't. By the way, referring to another case that has gotten some traction, that Idaho 4, I saw an interview, not the interview with the woman who is represented by Brian's public defender, but a father of one of the deceased. And he had such a thoughtful, kind of moving response to all of this. He was reserving judgment. He was not asking for the death penalty to be summarily executed. And it was just, I don't know that I could even approach that in his situation, but it was impressive, I thought. And here, unless you've been in this horrific situation to kind of steal or rip your thing, to snipe from the cheap seats about it seems to me to not be to kind of be a bumper sticker as opposed to giving it a little bit of thought.
Yeah, not to use a term that's become so hot button in the recent years, but it seems virtue signally to me. It's like, what are we doing?
Well, it's interesting too, because the part of the fight this week was, are they going to get a conviction? Is it a judgment of the peers? Where is this jury polled from? What's the composition of the jury? And as you know, Gary, I always feel like those are the most legitimate questions you can ask, because who your jury is. I often say, once I picked a jury, unless I teased Mark O'Mara during the George Zimmerman trial, I said, Mark, after you got that jury, the only way you lose this case is if you fall and hit your head, get a CTE. So I joke about it, but that's kind of the truth of it. There's an interesting clip I saw, and you have it, Gary, where we could play that kind of delves into the dynamics there locally.
Yes, I do. This is some thoughts from, this is a reporter going around and interviewing kind of normal locals as to what they think, given their time experiencing in the community.
Murdoch! Did you look your son and your wife in their eyes when you did it?
It is a bit of a circus each day when Alex Murdaugh enters the courthouse. Across the street, you hear the sound of generators powering what feels almost like a food truck party.
How's the food?
Oh, the food is great. Yeah. This is really good.
This is local barbecue. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I met Larry Adams and his wife Sandra. Larry grew up in the South Carolina Lowcountry.
Hopefully they do the right thing. The whole nation is watching them, and can't be no time for the good old boy stuff. We gotta have real, true justice.
When you say good old boys, what do you mean?
I mean, you get away with stuff, just get stuff swept on the rug, buy your stuff.
What do you think is going to happen?
I was discussing it with my husband, and I said to him, the jurors are all from here. How fair is it going to be?
Rose Lodehope and her friend Robin Pato drove an hour hoping to catch a glimpse of Alex Murdaugh.
What do you think it is about this case that has people so fascinated?
I think because it has so many different storylines to this is not the only thing, the murder trial. It goes real in depth and has a lot of intrigue and just very interesting and very sad, actually.
Based on, his history here, do you think he could get off?
I think he could get off, yes. Just because of the big name that they are and all the things they've gotten away with. Yeah, I think so.
Talk with the people from here and you realize very quickly this is all about a lot more than just this trial for them. It's bigger. A history, they say, of powerful families who feel above the law.
It shows you how our city is ran. All the people who we elect, now it's time for you to work. And I'm going to leave it just like that.
Do you think this could change things?
Yes, yeah, I hope so. Let them see that they can't keep doing the same thing and getting away with stuff like this.
It's fascinating because there you've got people who also are assuming, guilt, with the exception of the couple who was in the sandwich between, because, getting justice to them means getting a conviction. Not like get away with it suggests that you believe that somebody is guilty, and if they get away with it, a not guilty verdict is getting away with it. And then the last woman who was interviewed was talking about basically the same theme. So the jury selection and the jurors, that's something that you've got to be attuned to, because not only is there, I don't know that it's so much race as kind of hearkening back to where we're going to be with Memphis. I don't know that it's so much race as it is class and status, social stratification that is at work.
Yeah, class was exactly the word that I was thinking as well before you said it. It seems that it's, these locals and these people that were interviewed specifically in this clip sure seem to view this family as powerful to a point of, just separation. I mean, they are on a different strata when it comes to the things that they can accomplish. And, it's not wholly unreasonable when you look at some of the things, especially going back to the boat crash, and, just within a few hours, there are several members of the Murdaugh family in the hospital trying to talk to the people involved. And that's a level of access that I doubt that the woman who they interviewed who ran her own food truck would have gotten if one of her family members was involved in something similar. So it's, it doesn't.
Right. I mean, I agree. I'm not condemning it in the least. I'm just making the observation that it's important to understand that there's cross currents going on here, that some people may not appreciate just how kind of strong the currents are. Another thing that was on display this week in the testimony was something that we've talked about before, and still sometimes I read the comments and people still don't understand what the point is, and so I'll try to explicate it. Don't get confused when we talk about cell phone data, because that was some of the information that, as you know, Gary, was testified to this week.
Yeah, and for anyone who missed it, Mark's referring to a clip a tweet that we showed where a 911 operator was up there to testify that she was in a neighboring county from where Alex Murdaugh called, and because his cell phone picked up off of the tower that was in her county, the 911 call got routed to her, even though it should have been, most people would assume it would have been routed to the county he was standing in.
Right. And then there are people who say, well, then do you distrust your Maps app, for instance, on your phone, because that is GPS enabled? You understand that is not what we are talking about here. You're talking apples and oranges. What they are testifying to is, and what the law enforcement gets access to, because it's after the fact. It's very similar to the difference between when you get you get a wiretap. If you've got a wiretap of the conversations in real time, you know what the conversation says. You know who the people are and who's talking, presumably, if you know their voices. If you get what's called the pen register, the records after, you just know that a phone call was made, okay? So there's a substantive difference there. It's the same thing here. They get, after the fact, the cell phone tower records that shows which tower the phone is pinging off of. They're not getting necessarily the GPS in real-time records, and that's not what they're testifying to. So stop with that misnomer, because unless they've got, and there is a way to get this so that you understand, you can get that information, but generally law enforcement does not, and that is not what the actual witness testimony was on the stand. In fact, as you just explained it, Gary, it was exactly what we've been talking about for years here. The towers and the tower information is saved. That is what the carrier saves. When they then, after the fact, subpoena the carrier, they get the cell phone towers that show the ping activity. Well, the ping activity is determined by how busy one particular tower is or not busy, and they lay it off. It automatically can lay off from one tower to another. So understand, and by the way, for those who say, well, what about Wi-Fi? Yes, Wi-Fi can have the same kind of misleading effect. That is exactly the point. And that is exactly what the lawyers will be fighting about, that you cannot say to any degree of scientific certainty that because somebody pinged on one tower, that means that somebody was directly under that tower or within a certain radius.
Yeah. And more to your point, I think people get confused because they do look at their Maps app when they're driving and they can see the little blue dot. If you have an iPhone, that information is stored on the chip in your phone. It's not distributed. That's for your use only, and it is forward facing for the user. But, you brought up Wi-Fi. It is entirely possible to be in your home connected to Wi-Fi, pinging off of one tower, and that tower gets too busy for some reason, and you would start pinging off another tower without ever having moved. That's totally possible.
While sitting in your spot. So understand that and that is what actually gets presumably testified to by the experts or by the carrier. That's what I've done these cross-examinations on more times than I can count. And sometimes it's helpful to exculpate somebody because you can show that somebody is consistent, especially if you've got their phone, to your point. You can then pinpoint that's a different quality and type of evidence than the cell phone tower evidence.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Mark, thank you very much for your time this morning. I appreciate it. I'm sure we could go another 20 minutes because this case is just so fascinating, but we have several other cases to get to early this week as soon as we get back with Ace, and I look forward to it.
So do I, Gary. Always good to see you. And to everybody, have a safe and sound Sunday, and we got a little bit of football.
There you go. Cheers, Mark.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Beyond a Reasonable Doubt. Stay tuned for more bonus episodes coming soon.